And we are live with
Jonathan. Ah.
Right. And I'll remember that not to put your oh dear. Can I say your surname? No, just put Jonathan, that's okay.
My surname is Campbell.
Alright. Yep.
There we go.
Right, so I was just thinking about people stalking you. That's okay.
It's okay, I'm used to it.
Yes.
I shouldn't joke about that. That's not nice. That's a bad thing. Stalking awareness it happens. We should
Yeah. I mean, some ESFP chicks though might be like initially, like when they become famous, it's like they get their first stalk. Yes, I've made it, and then they go, "Oh no." Right. So today we're going to be concentrating on an Enneagram 4w5 person posted this in the INFP group, and she asked about one of the things she mentioned was I almost put personality. But instead of borderline. But borderline personality. So if you could,
they mentioned bipolar. Bipolar is different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so yeah, if you could start with a statement about and say, "Hey Jeff, I'm not about this type as this. What is your belief in terms of the relationship between?"
Okay, before I got into typology, I read up on personality disorders and all those things. So after I got into typology, I started to see how these correlated to different things. But I'm not saying that if you are this type, you're going to have this disorder. So it's more complicated. It's just there's correlations.
Yeah.
You can definitely see them, but they're not. It's not identical. It's not like an unhealthy ESTP is definitively always going to be a psychopath, for example.
Right.
It's much more complicated than that. But you'll see trends, see patterns. That's the idea.
Right. Okay, that's good. That should please Jeff.
I'm sure it would please if you understood my accent.
Ooh, you should have said that. That was on it. Right. So I'll do some recommendations. So, The Career Within You, which is an Enneagram book written by Ingrid Stad with Elizabeth Wakely. In my opinion, not as funny as the other books because I think the humour is coming from Rennie Barron because the books that Rennie Barron written on her own are funnier. Have you seen that? So there's that one. Rennie Barron has done Opposites Attract. This is her latest book. It's an MBTI book, I think. She's done... right, let's do the Rennie Barron books. She has done... Oh, gotta be careful. Gotta be careful. Right, here we go. In order. Oh, be careful of these books. Right, she did. Oh, in fact, this is relevant. It's an Enneagram hangout. Enneagram Made Easy. Funny book. One of the best jokes in it. Actually, you can only have one best. So one of the better jokes in it is what we got here. Right. So if we go to Enneagram 5, I always show this joke. 2 Enneagram 5s on a first date.
Yeah.
Best first date ever. Right, so nice humour in this, but it's a good way to, right, say you want to introduce a family member. I'm not necessarily saying they're a sensing type, but if you want like something simple and easy to get people into typology, and you think that maybe you don't want to start talking about functions straight away with them, then that one is a great introduction. And then you can show them. Then the next book she did. So this was written with Elizabeth Wakely, Enneagram Made Easy. Then she did the sequel. Are You My Type? Am I Yours? Have you read that, Jonathan?
No, I have not.
That came out in about 19. So I think 1994. 1995. What type am I? MBTI book is this is Rennie Barron on her own. 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2004, she wrote The Four Temperaments.
All right.
Against the Humorous book in like large print. And she's a great chapter here about correlating the temperaments with Enneagram.
Yeah.
So got some good autofocus on this camera. So that was 2004, and then we have Opposites Attract, which is her latest book, and I think this is mainly a focus on. So we can actually wonder how. So I'll go through this, and then I'll wonder about how it relates to duality. So it's got chapters like these kind of. I'm just going to click on my square.
Uh-huh.
Right, that should be quite clear.
Yes.
Right, so people can grab that, and then I'll go up a bit.
Okay.
Right. So she always relating it. So what it's like, say, with thinkers and feelers in relationships, judges and perceivers, sensors and intuitives, extroverts and introverts. I like the fact she spelled extrovert right.
I prefer the O though. I prefer extrovert.
Ooh. Right. Okay, so
I'm a rebel.
put that over there. You're a rebel, yes. I'm gonna put that on there. You're inner ESTP rebel. Done that. I've edged that one. Edged that one. Edged that one. Yeah. Right then. So I will. I'll just put these back. Oh, recommendations. What do you think of that book, Personality Types by Riso and Hudson?
I think it's really good. It's got certain problems. It's a bit out of date in places, but it's really good. I use it a lot.
I think you said in the past, is it one of your two favourite Enneagram books?
There's one or two I use the most. Yes, the other one's the Beatrice Chestnut one.
Right, I'll get that one. It's quite pricey at the moment, that book.
Yeah, I've just last night actually I just bought another Riso and Hudson book, Discovering the Enneagram. I think. Not sure. I haven't had a chance to read it properly, so.
Right, so if you, I'll just go through that. We can go through. So where to start? Okay, most people watching this probably already know about. I don't know which term should be defined first. If you explain borderline personality disorder in relation to Enneagram 4 and sort of, as you do it, explain Enneagram 4.
Well, I'll explain Enneagram 4 first.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I'll just. Okay, Enneagram 4 is the individualist. I'll just read from this page. This is the Enneagram Institute page. 4s are self-aware, sensitive, and reserved. They are emotionally honest, creative, and personal, but can also be moody and self-conscious, withholding themselves from others due to feeling vulnerable and defective. They can also feel disdainful and exempt from ordinary ways of living. They typically have problems with melancholy, self-indulgence, and self-pity. At their best, inspired and highly creative, they are able to renew themselves and transform the experiences. Key motivations: they want to express themselves and their individuality, to create and surround themselves with beauty, to maintain certain moods and feelings, to withdraw to protect themselves image. To take care of emotional needs before attending to anything else. To attract a rescuer, which is inverted commas. They tend to be NFs in the typical NFs in the MBTI and in the functions. Although Ben here identifies as a 4 and he's an ITB.
Very carefully worded that. Not is an Enneagram 4, but identifies with an Enneagram 4. I will remember that.
Very, very politically correct.
Right.
And is also I relate to a bit because first I'm an INFJ and also I'm a type 1, which disintegrates to a 4 under stress, so I can relate to that. I think it's one of the rarest types, and I do have a feeling a lot of NFs, especially INFs, will be identify as 4 or be typed as 4, even if they're not actually a 4, because it is quite NF overall.
Yeah.
All the things are there, but there are distinctions between a type 4 who's an NF and an NF who's another type. You can see them if you get to know them.
In fact, when I have taken the Kersey temperament sorter, or Kersey 4-type sorter, and this one in, have you read this book, Why Him, Why Her?
No.
And when I took this, and because this focuses on motive, I scored as NF. So, wait a minute. It's a bit awkward. It won't fit on the. I'll put it down there. Oh, it won't. I'm just going to budge it up a bit, and then we'll see it. No, I've got to budge it up a lot. Darn it. Where is it? Where am I? There we go. Look, NF. Yeah. NF, top, then NT, then SJ, then SP. I'll just pause it so people can see my scores. But again, this relates to motivation rather than... Now, when I go through Victor's INTP profile...
The NF is the boreas number. Is it 32 you get?
Yeah, 32 for NF.
Yeah.
NT 25, SJ 24, SP 18.
Yeah. All right.
And then when I did... so that's a good book, Why Him, Why Her. It's got some good science in. Rips off David Kersey and doesn't properly attribute anything to him, unlike Linda Berens, which is like, thank you very much, David Kersey. It's like, David Kersey, you planted the seeds and gave me a framework of understanding, told me all this kind of stuff. Very former student, gives him a lot of credit. This person doesn't. Now, lies about, Kersey came up with it in 1998. She takes terms from his book, like Mindmate, Helpmate, and all of that. So she's read that book in order to take those terms, right? And on the back of said book, it says the first book came out in 1978 and sold 2 million copies. So she knows when the first one came out. Yet she put, because she didn't want people to think, just be honest, Fisher, just be honest and say, I'm inspired by David Kersey, but look at all the new science. Right. Right. So what am I?
You have been publicly shamed, Helen Fisher.
Yes. Right. And she should have mentioned Ernst Kretschmer, who was the guy that first. This relates to, and Kretschmer thought that NTers were more likely to go. The intuiting types are more likely to go schizoid. And so for instance, it's got schizothymes. Wait a minute. There. And it's like intuiting types. Poets, pathetics, romantics, formalists.
Pathetics.
Experimenters. Yeah. People going for pathos. And then you got, for experimenters, we have exact logicians, systematists, Meta. I'll move the camera rather than moving the thingy to the camera. Amateur hour. Well, we are amateurs. Oh, it's stuck. My webcam's stuck. There it goes. So, there we go.
Ah, beautiful.
And so it's fair enough to say abstract types.
Mm-hmm.
Pure idealists, despots and fanatics, cold calculators. And then Jeff will like the fact that SP is under humorists. And now, tough whole hoggers, I'm thinking, that amused me. Now, dashing organisers, that was changed to jolly organisers in another translation. Now, which type do you think is a jolly organiser? Oh, I'll put it there, ESFJ. And so, and I think Kretschmer is INTP, because he then takes this and says that you can join together all human knowledge. He does put that there. And all this might be then be able to integrate everything. Because that's what the INTP will... There we go, look! In the advance towards a firm synthetic articulation of the entire field of modern thought. Now that is transcontextual thinking, when you think you can join everything together. That's an INTP. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Right, then we have, again, the table. Now, he said there was no relationship between physique and character for normal people, but people who had gone insane due to overproduction of certain hormones. So, for instance, you could say, like, oh, you know, you could, like, medically see that this was an overactive gland, and it would say, like, secretions of the blood, the endocrine system. And so... And what Kersey did is he matched these up to the SJs and the SPs. And so he saw that the types that he called schizothymes are like the intuiting types, and they will have a tendency to, I think maybe the schizoid personality, or between here. What do you think of that, where it says hyperesthetic, sensitive, and anesthetic cold?
So, NFNTs.
Yeah. I mean, when we talked about the schizoid personality at the start, and he thought that SJs could become depressed, and SPs are usually gay, i.e. happy. That's true. But again, these are the types in an unhealthy state. Right. So, and he says here, and he's always saying, look, this is for extreme cases, not the normal population. And that normal people... So this guy's really misrepresented on Wikipedia. Right, because he says, look, normal people are an admixture of temperament and physique. And now here he actually does mention hormones. And it says it's because of the balance of hormones. One-sided accentuation of one group of hormones results either from isolated inherited variants. Now, he usually says the word hormones. And this was written in 1925. Right. So he was a psychiatrist, and he saw the relationships, the patterns. I'm getting slightly off track. Sorry about that, folks. Also recommend Psychological Types. If any INTPs out there, Personology by Kersey. If you're not an INTP, don't buy it. See, that might make other types buy it. Oh, I'm clever too. I'll buy it. It's just that it's written in a very INTP way. Right. What have we got here? Recommendations. Blank 7. Enough of that though. Right. So, Human Action Study Guide, Robert P. Murphy. Now a little bit too any now. I'll calm down. So, you've told us about Enneagram 4. A little bit about Enneagram 4.
Yes.
Did you want to go through more bullet points?
No, that'll do for now, I think. Because the main thing is the borderline, isn't it?
Right, okay. So, if you now... Just like last time when we did the hangout, I really wanted to like nail you down on like what... Remember we did like what exactly does schizoid mean? What exactly does avoidant mean? So if you give me like what really does borderline personality disorder mean?
Okay, it's actually quite a difficult one. It's one of the more studied and disagreed on disorders, but I think at its core it's about it's being emotionally unstable and being emotionally intense, so having emotions that are too strong. So, yeah. Hold on, I'll get the symptoms up. Okay, basically, you're. Okay, I want to make. Firstly, let's make a distinction between borderline personality and bipolar personality, which is what the person was talking about. Bipolar disorder is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and it is not exactly a personality thing. I don't know if it may or may not correlate with certain MBTI types, but it's not really anything to do with personality because it's something that cannot be controlled. It's more like both borderline and bipolar can be emotionally unstable, for example, they both have mood swings. However, with a borderline, their mood swings are more likely to be set off by something outside of them. So they could be having a good day, something happens that sets them off, and then they go completely in the other direction. Whereas with a bipolar, it doesn't matter if something sets them off or not. It could be nothing sets them off. It's just like a flip switches in their brain. It's out of control. I think bipolar ones can last a bit longer as well. Their mood swings can last longer, whereas borderline's a bit shorter. And yeah, you get the idea. Bipolar is not a personality thing. I'm not sure if the correlation to personality type. But with borderline, I would say that sounds very much like strong FI, and especially sexual instinct with FI. So whether that's just FPs or any type is another story. But go ahead.
So is there any relationship between the kinds of personalities there are in bipolar? I mean, like for instance, if someone's an INFJ at one end of the bipolar spectrum, do they tend to go to a particular type at the other end? Is there any pattern there?
I don't know enough about bipolar disorder.
Right.
I don't think INFJs are likely to be diagnosed as bipolar, but that's partially just because INFJs are so rare in the first place. So the odds of them getting it are relatively slim. It's more likely to be an SP type, just if for no other reason than SPs are so common. SJs might, but SPs are probably test behaviour.
If we talk about like self-dualization, could it be a situation where could an INFJ go ESTP when they go manic, or is just something that's not type related?
As for bipolar, I'm not thinking it's at the moment. I'm not thinking it's type related because I try and make a distinction between mental disorders and personality disorders.
Okay.
Disorder.
Right. So, like I said, because you said it's complicated, we're really trying to nail down what BPD is.
Yeah, BPD is different. BPD is the borderline personality.
Yeah.
So
last time you went through bullet points to diagnose it. That would be great if you did that.
Okay, so this is just from Wikipedia. First symptom is splitting, which means thinking in extremes. So, thinking things are really good or really bad, or being really strongly partisan in politics, or having really strong opinions that, especially if they're out of keeping with the actual situation, or if they're not appropriate at the time, like to the point where it's detrimental to whatever you're trying to do, like any conversations you're having, or interfering with your reasoning, that kind of thing.
Right.
The second one is chaos in relationships, which is one of the more borderline personality disorder. Usually does revolve around relationships a lot when you're reading about it or seeing the descriptions. So that's another sign of, if you go back to the splitting to the thinking extremes, what will happen is they'll have things like one day they're very attached, very trusting towards someone, whereas another time they are completely convinced this person is going to abandon them or is plotting against them or can't be trusted or whatever, that sort of thing. Actually, before I continue, since we're both Star Wars fans, a pair of psychologists watched the Star Wars prequels and actually wrote a paper on Anakin Skywalker, who becomes Darth Vader, and said that he likely has BPD. He has borderline personality disorder. I think he's an INFP as well. I think he's a type 6 INFP, SXSP, that's my opinion. But he was diagnosed probably with borderline personality disorder by professional psychologists. So that's an interesting little tidbit. The third point is markedly disturbed sense of identity. How to define that? That's more like, because of their chaos with relationships, it's not just romantic relationships, it's also their family and their place in the world. So it's like you're not sure if you belong in certain places, or you invest too much. Sometimes you invest too much of yourself in certain people or in certain things, and other times you're not sure if you can trust them, and this affects your self-identity, your sense of self. Fourth, intense or uncontrollable emotional outbursts. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's just like you're really angry or really sad or even really happy. That could happen. Usually the thing is, because they feel intense emotions, they will overreact to things. So if they should feel angry, they will feel furious. If they should feel sad, they will weep. If they should feel happy, they will be euphoric. And that can be very stressful for the people around them, and also be very stressful for them, because it's not a thing they can easily control. I think usually this is treated with medication, as well as therapy. Point 5, unstable interpersonal relationships and self-esteem. Again, all these are kind of repeating themselves, but this is just, again, because they're not sure if they can trust people or not, or if because their emotions keep getting out of control, that just affects, it obviously affects the relationships, and it can affect, because the relationships are effective and dysfunctional, that affects their self-esteem. Like, they're not sure if they'll ever have anyone, or if anyone will ever stick around forever.
What are their attachment styles? Are they usually fearful avoidant?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It could probably be any type, because it depends on the person. The next one is concerns about abandonment, which, as I said, these all fall into each other. there's a certain amount of paranoia there. Self-damaging behaviour. Now, stereotypically, this would be things like cutting yourself or actual self-harm, which does happen. They can do that. They can hurt themselves. They can put themselves in dangerous situations. But it can also be being self-destructive in other ways. Things like at work, they're not doing their job properly, or in relationships, they keep testing their partners or their family members, and they're sabotaging themselves in little ways, or pushing things too far, that sort of thing. So it could be physical self-harm, it could be other forms of self-harm. A distorted self-image. I'm not. I think that's all to do with am I lovable or not? Do I deserve love or not? Can I? Love and attachment, as I say, is a pretty big theme. But yeah, you get the impression it doesn't really explain it well there, but wait a minute. Here we go. Here's a better definition. People with BBD tend to have trouble seeing a clear picture of their identity. In particular, they tend to have difficulty knowing what they value, believe, prefer, or enjoy. They're often unsure about their long-term goals for relationships and jobs. This difficulty with knowing who they are and what they value can cause people with BBD to experience feeling empty and lost. Now, we're talking about Enneagram 4 there, but all of this sounds like Enneagram 6 as well. Especially the sexual 6, or SXSP, I think. Impulsivity, and lastly, frequently accompanied by depression, anxiety, anger, substance abuse, or rage. The most distinguishing symptoms of BBD are marked sensitivity to rejection and thoughts and fears of possible abandonment. Overall, the features of BBD include unusually intense sensitivity in relationships with others, difficulty regulating emotions, and impulsivity. Other symptoms may include feeling unsure of one's personal identity, morals and values, having paranoid thoughts when feeling stressed, and severe dissociation. It also mentions somewhere else that they can be reckless drivers. It's just thrown in there. But yeah, that's... Any questions? I would say this strongly correlates more with SX instinct than any particular. I would say some Enneagram types correlate with it, but especially sexual instinct in particular, based on all the relationship stuff. And SXSP.
I think the father's called the sexual instinct the one-to-one.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could talk a little bit about specifically what, because there might be some people that don't know, what is the sexual instinct, like the proper definition of it?
I'll get the proper definition up then. I can't find it. So this is... Okay, so... Oh, wait a minute. Missed it. Okay, so this is from a website called The 16 Types. This is their definition. Hold on, I'll explain what the instincts are first.
Yep.
Okay, they're basically in the Enneagram. This is technically this is actually a separate thing, I think.
Yeah.
Oscar Icazo, who helped develop the Enneagram, had this other theory called the instinctual variants, and they're usually combined as one thing. But I think technically they're supposed to be distinct. But since it's the same person, it's obviously you can use them both, and your instincts will affect your Enneagram type.
I will give you the logic that they use for it being separate. So, for instance, it says here, this is the personality type.
when that book was written, the instincts were were still being slightly developed. So that was written in 1986.
Yeah,
So,
but I can give you their logic. In our view, these three components are a valuable addition to Enneagram theory, or they are not technically subtypes. A subtype, by definition, is dependent on being part of a type. For instance, you could say that blackbirds and sparrows are both subtypes of birds. The quality of what distinguishes them is dependent on the quality of birds. However, male birds and female birds would not exactly be subtypes, because you could classify male and female things separately without taking birds into account. Male and female would be an additional independent variable, and the instinctual types function this way. In other words, one could divide a room full of people into three groups: self-preservation types, social types, and sexual types, simply by knowing the definitions of these three categories and without knowing the Enneagram types of the individuals. On the other hand, wings are a true subtype in that it would be meaningless to talk about a 5-wing or 7-wing without talking about sixes. Very succinctly, wings are a dependent variable and instincts are an independent variable.
yeah, that makes so much sense. The other thing is, because they're not the ones who because they don't focus on things as much, I think they sometimes use different definitions. Like apparently they type Donald Trump as a self-preservation type, whereas a lot of other people could myself would type him as a sexual type.
Yeah,
So there's these
Yeah.
things.
I would as well.
Yeah, they're typing as self-preservation because he's about money and power and stuff. So it's I think their version is a bit simplistic.
Yeah, just about.
I had an argument with someone in one of the groups about it, but another thing. Anyway,
I mean, I'll just say something. That ignores the fact that a lot of men don't want power because of self-preservation. They want it because powerful men are, and especially if they're ESTPs, they realise that the more powerful a man is, the more attractive a man is to the opposite sex.
Well, I'll explain that. 'Cause sexual instinct is more complicated than just attraction. I'll get into that in a moment. But the other thing is, if you have you can engage a certain behaviour. You can have, obviously, you have all three instincts, and it's going to be complicated. What's your priority? For instance, most people would, I think they type Gandhi as a social type because he, you know, mass movement, protests and all that. If you know anything about Gandhi, you know anything about his actual personal life, he is the most Essex person you could imagine. I think he even described himself as obsessed with sex, and he would probably be in jail today, to be honest.
Ooh.
That's another thing.
Were his partners rather young?
Young and something related, yes.
Ooh. Shivers down the spine.
Well, he had this thing where he would test out. He tried to get over his sex addiction, but he did it with things like he would sleep with dozens of young women, but without actually.
Must have been a big bed.
Them. Yes.
Must have been a massive bed.
Yes. So
it would have been terrible him trying to get out and go to the toilet. He'd have to climb out over all of them.
Yeah. So right, it's a lot unclear if he did have sex or not, or because I think he alluded to things like he's found ways to he's found loopholes in his role or something.
What was his Jungian type? INFP?
He's either INFP or INFJ. He's both. He's usually typed as INFJ, but I've heard some people say that they might be INFP. Either way, I think he's an SX type, and he's usually typed as either a 1 or a 9. Enneagram-wise, which makes sense. Anyway, off topic. Okay, so the core instincts are the basic survival instincts, instinctual energies, drives, or subtypes, or not subtypes, of course. These are part of our body-based intelligence and key to our biological imperatives. They are built into our unconscious nature and aid in our survival as individuals and as a species. Instincts are thus more fundamental than Enneagram type. They relate to our animal soul. From the, in quotation marks, from the perspective of the Enneagram, we want to know how these drives manifest and function, both as defined by each instinct alone and in terms of their alignment, known as stacking. So, the sexual instinct. Sexual instinct can be called the instinct of attraction. It's aggressive, competitive, single-minded, all or nothing. The use of this energy is intensely fiery and affirmative, go-get-it approach, a life and death matter, e.g. salmon swimming upstream to meet and die. With this instinct, you are either turned on or you're not. It is what it is. You can't fight Mother Nature. With this instinct, one's attention is solely captivated energetically by someone or something. The SX energy is described as high energy, is often experienced as intense, assertive, laser-like, intently focused, playful yet penetrating in nature. The feeling of SX first is sometimes compared to being on a roller coaster ride, even though you aren't on one. This subtype will sacrifice for the relationship to ensure intensity connection. This intensity does not have to be met by another person. It can be satisfied by a project, hobby, or special interest. Rather than waiting to the group to resolve their problems and challenges, these types tend to look to close relations and activities that can guarantee them an experience of liveliness and intensity. I'll just get to the bullet points. A few more. Primary concern, intense experiences, connections, and contacts, wide-ranging and exploratory in order to find something to complete them inside, skydiving, deep conversations, exciting movies, etc. Primary focus, people and attractions promising intense energy and charge. Primary ambition, looking outside themselves for the person or situation that will complete them, and then obsessing over that completing element. Primary stress is lack of intense mental or emotional stimulation, lack of an intense connection or experience, and their coping methods were unhealthy. Scattered attention, lack of focus, sexual promiscuity, intensely avoiding intense experiences and connections with a fearful and dysfunctional attitude towards sex, intimacy, and other intense completing experiences, and is skewed by secondary instinct. Yes.
I can read out the Riso and Hudson description, which is a little bit like that. Sexual. Many people originally identify themselves as this type, perhaps confusing the idea of a sexual instinctual type with being a sexy person. Of course, sexiness is in the eye of the beholder, and there are plenty of sexy people in all three of the instinctual types. Furthermore, lest one think this type more glamorous than the other two, one would do well to remember that the instinct can become distorted in the type, leading to the area of life causing the greatest problems. In healthy to average sexual types, there is a desire for intensity of experience, not just sexual experience, but any activity having a similar charge.
Mm-hmm.
This intensity could be found in a great conversation or an exciting movie. Much has been said about this type's preferring one-on-one relationships versus the social type's preference for larger groups. But a quick poll of one's acquaintances will reveal that almost all people prefer communicating one-on-one rather than in a group. The question is more one of the intensity of contact and the strength of the desire for intimacy. Sexual types are the intimacy junkies of the instinctual types, often neglecting pressing obligations or even basic maintenance if they are swept up in someone or something that has captivated them. This gives a wide-ranging, exploratory approach to life, but also a lack of focus on one's own priorities. In their neurotic forms, this type can manifest with a wandering lack of focus, sexual promiscuity, and acting out. There was a comma in between lack of focus and sexual promiscuity, so it's like a difference. And I've put here sexual promiscuity and acting out. I've put really that's a neutral thing, rather than saying that that's someone on the bad. And then the negative is, or just the opposite, in a fearful, dysfunctional attitude towards sex and intimacy. Sexual types, however, will be intense even about their avoidances. In a conclusion, no matter what Enneagram personality type is involved, sexual types are focused on having intense, intimate interactions and experiences with others and with the environment to give them a powerful sense of aliveness.
So you identify as SX first. So how do you feel with these descriptions?
Well, there's some parts of this I'm thinking, well, that sounds like INFJ, like that bit there, intense sense of aliveness. Sounds like INFJ, but there's bits.
I don't think so. Okay.
Well, like the suggestive SE. So the bits that, intimacy junkies. Didn't neglect basic maintenance if they're swept up in someone or something that has captivated them.
The thing to remember is your first instinct is more what you want. Your second instinct is what you're more comfortable with. So it's actually your second instinct is your best or your least worst, if that depends, depending on the strength.
Right. It might be.
Your second instinct is more of a support, or
right.
Your second instinct is sometimes a means to an end as well. Like you want to get your second instinct sorted, so you can deal with your first things.
So is the second one a means to an end?
That's what I'm saying. That's one way of putting it.
Right.
Or how I usually put it anyway.
I may be SXXO.
Yeah, I thought that because I remember you saying once in a hangout that you were at the gym once and you just started randomly talking to people and you wanted to start up conversations.
Oh, wait a minute, say that again.
I remember you saying you were at the gym once and you started randomly talking to people and trying to start a conversation.
Yeah, if something funny appeared in my mind, like for instance, one night when I once finished a hangout, I would say something like, "Stick a fork in me, I'm done."
Yeah, see, I'm actually social first, but I wouldn't do that because it's social first not necessarily about being sociable. It's about having an eye on the group or being aware of certain things.
I mean, it all comes down though to a lot of non-typological factors that really affect.
Yeah. There's also the strength of your second instinct. So you can be weak side, mid range, or strong side. So, for instance, I could say, for instance, that Batman might be SOSP. He's social instinct. He's social first because his mission is crime fighting, protecting Gotham City, and all that. But he's self-pres second, and he uses self-pres as a means to achieve it. You know, being rich, being in shape. You know, perfecting his body and his mind to pursue it. He'd be strong side SP though, because he puts so much time and energy into doing that, and he's really good at it. Whereas I'm more weak side because although I'm SP second, I'm also a lazy bastard. I've got some weight on and all that, so I'm comfortable with looking after myself. But I do think a lot about getting in, sorting myself out, like getting in shape and learning and having enough money and all that. But in practice, it's not as dreams. But my ambitions and my thoughts are usually more social, and I would like to have the self-pres stuff sorted before pursuing the social things I deal with. Social types can actually be quite introverted and withdrawn.
Do you think that matches up with your Enneagram type. Sorry, with your INFJ type.
Being social. Most.
Yeah, it's just like social, like auxiliary FE, and then the SE being lower down.
Well, I think Lady Lullaby is not. She's social last. She's SXSP. I think she identified as. So it's not right. I would say that INFJs usually are social type, but not always. There are social blind spots. Social blind spot means your social instinct is last.
Oh, I may have asked you this before. Do you think that environment can change someone's Enneagram? Or are they born a certain Enneagram? When does someone become an Enneagram?
I think you're more or less born, or develops. One theory I've heard is that. See, the thing to remember is the Enneagram can be divided into 3 sectors. So 8, 9, and 1 of the body triad, 2, 3, and 4 the heart, 5, 6, and 7 the head. So one theory I've heard is that you're born into your triad, and depending on your early upbringing, that will affect what Enneagram type you become and what instincts you'll develop. I think it is affected. I think some of it is affected by environment, but it settles in early. So it's not something you can change over the course of your life. I don't think so much. I think the longer you're in it, the more set, the more your brain sets in certain parts. Because if you've ever been around young children, you can sometimes see they do have distinct personalities already, and they'll act in certain ways. Some are happy, some are sad, some cry easily, and all that. Like I've got a cousin who actually showed counterphobic behaviour, which is type 6 behaviour, and he was only about 2 at the time. But it was basically he jumped off some stairs and he cried, and then later on I caught him trying to climb up the stairs to jump again to conquer his fear of jumping off the stairs, and I told him no, don't do that because he wanted to hurt himself, and he cried again because he's not allowed to jump off the stairs because he was intimidated by the stairs. I might be reading too much into a 2-year-old's thought processes, but that seemed to be how he was going.
Right, so if we go through this post, I won't say who it is, but the first part of the post is, have you ever noticed the correlation of bipolar symptoms and NFPs? More specific in a grip.
Sorry, you broke up there the last bit.
Okay. Have you ever noticed the correlation of bipolar symptoms and NFPs, more specifically sexual fours, in the grip? So bipolar symptoms and NFPs in the grip.
Yeah, well, like I said, bipolar is not the same as borderline, but
right,
they can look quite similar, and so you could say that borderline would correlate with that.
Right. So now what we can do is,
I would say that Riesel and Hudson, they do not correlate unhealthy fours with borderline types, but I don't think they correlate borderline with any particular type.
Right.
It does, to me, borderline does sound like unhealthy sexual 4, sometimes unhealthy sexual 6, and maybe more, or even just unhealthy image types 2, 3, and 4. Right. So 6 disintegrates to 3, and so on.
So we can go with if we go with sexual 4. What can you say about sexual 4 INFPs? And then relate that to BPD.
In a second. Sexual 4 I know are they're the most 8-like 4. The 4 that resembles an 8. very much. They are the most emotionally intense of the fours. They're more. I've actually read descriptions that send me as like predators. Pardon, I don't know if you are a predator or not, but okay. It was. They are. I'll just read the description because that's not one I've read enough about. Fours in general believe that love is by far the most important thing in their lives, and the sexual subtype in particular believes that when, and only when, they find the perfect love will they be happy. This is often coupled with belief that once they have a perfect love, that they once had a perfect love, sorry. Either their mother or some significant person loved them unconditionally and was the happiest and perhaps the only happy time of their life. This was the Garden of Eden before they discovered to be defective and similarly rejected. Their passion is envy, so they tend to be unhealthy. Fours are envious of others because they think other people have things that they deserve but aren't getting because they're defective in some way. That they're not normal and they're not worthy of love. They tend to romanticize the dark side. Or it's not even necessarily defection. It could be that they're cursed with being too intelligent, perhaps, or too wealthy, or too beautiful, so on. But whatever it is, it's prevented them from having real intimate relationships with others.
In that case of too beautiful, do they worry that, say, the man is only in it for the sex and that they don't actually love them?
Well, not necessarily just the sex. It could be just that it's more like they don't know the real them. Like they're loving the image that they project, because 2, 3, and 4 image types, and they're all about putting an image out there to be loved or be noticed or whatever. But there's always this tension because of that, because they're worried that the people love the image, not the real person. So for a fours, their image is, romanticizing their darker side or their more emotional side or their moodier side, and they're very in touch with their darker emotions and they see them as real. They can also, although they can tell the difference between fantasy and reality, they can prefer fantasy to reality because fantasy can give them more can meet their emotional needs more, and therefore it's more real in that way.
Can the sexual for INFP appear INFJ?
I think it can, yes. Well, especially if they're social seconds. But that's. I guess I don't know a lot of fours, so I don't think I know any INFP fours, so I'm not 100% sure of that, but I wouldn't be surprised because I've definitely seen INFPs who can seem quite INFJ regardless of their type.
Can an INFP sexual 4 have the victim romance style?
Well, I'm not sure because romance styles are not my specialty, but there's.
Because to me, if an INFP had the sexual romance style, I believe that would create a lot of cognitive dissonance in them, because it would be like, because it's sort of like the difference between the beta quadra and the delta quadra, where
I think sexual fours they can want to control their partner to a certain extent, or dominate their partner, especially if they're less healthy. Because, like I said, this is the most 8-ish. 8 type 4, and 8 is the most forceful personality. 8 is the most strong-willed personality, so this is a very strong-willed type in general.
You're talking about sexual force?
Yes. Or it can appear like that, they can appear quite 8-like. It's also the other thing is with the body types 8, 9, and 1, they can have problems with anger, whether they know or not, whether they show or not. Sexual 4s and sexual 6s are actually probably the angriest type, so even though they're not body triad, but then they can, when they're under stress or less healthy, they can, because the sexual 4s, because they romanticize their dark side, their darker emotions, they can romanticize anger because it's sincere, because it's free, because it's real.
Right. Can the sexual 4 INFJ, do you think, if we're looking at things from a Jungian lens, do you think they have accentuated extroverted sensor?
They can look at, they can be quite, because they're quite intense, because they're quite out there, because they have strong wants. I suppose they could seem like they have strong SES. It wouldn't surprise me. And we're talking theoreticals, because like I said, this isn't.
And also the beta quadra sexual power games.
Could you elaborate?
I think you were in the chat where an ENFJ, whose first name is named after a country, if you know what I mean.
I don't think I was in that chat.
It was a chat on the EIE subtypes, and she was writing about the power games that ENFJs get involved in.
I'm vaguely remembering it.
And it's like the STPs and NFJs are into power games, and her point of view was that what she wanted to do was where she was saying that it's getting the other person, it's almost getting it's like the one who wins is the one that gets the other person to care more. So, for instance, maybe that victim thing of them attracting the STP, because STPs, they act on their impulses. So the NFJ will know, oh, he really likes me. And then you could have that little situation where it's like, on one level, on one aspect, it's the STP male that's being assertive and driving the relationship. Whereas the NFJ female might say, no, I'm the one that is manipulating him because he has greater desire. And there is that battle where if you were to ask the ESTP about it, they would say, bottom line, she's doing what I'm saying. Where, you know what I mean? So maybe in that situation, maybe an NFP commenting on that would say, hey girl, you're being manipulated by the ESTP. You're deluding yourself.
I almost feel like I'm not the person to talk to this about, because actually I do know a type 4 INFJ would be better at this. I don't know if she'd come or not.
Well, it'd be nice.
It'd be nice. We could ask her, but
yeah. Well, you could ask her. You know her.
Yes.
Hello, I'm someone you don't know. Would you like to come into a hangout, or would you rather be invited by someone you know?
Oh, you know her too. She knows you. But I won't say her name. I won't say her name is.
Have I been in hangouts with her before?
No, you haven't been in hangouts, but she knows all of you, and you know all of her from the groups.
Oh, type her name in the side, please. Curious.
Their own channel, but not under this name.
Oh, her.
Oh, her.
Her, right? Yeah, she.
Sorry.
Yes.
I like how you say that.
Well, she's a bit of a handful.
I hope she doesn't see. I hope she doesn't see this. What do you call it?
No, I think she might indulge in that beta quadra stuff. Power games.
Well, I'm just saying she knows more about it than I do.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And that's what I mean about the power games involved, where it can be a situation where, say for NFJ women, where they are playing the victim, and what it will come down to in that situation quite frequently, like, put the theory to one side, it will come down to who has higher sexual self-esteem. Who do both of them think is more attractive of the two? That is what it will come down to. Where if the NFJ female is
males
more attractive, maybe if the guy thinks, oh, she might be slightly out of my, that's where the power dynamic comes in. As to sensing who wants it more, and I think consciously the NFJs are thinking that, oh, I can get this guy to, but I also think there can be an unconscious element in there to have. Now, Jacqueline Pearce, now this is relevant because I got an interview with Jacqueline Pearce, and there was a story in Blake 7 about this man who was a chauvinist. And there's a line where she says, now he like grabbed her and kissed her, like roughly, and she says to him, I will now refer to that degrading act you put me through earlier on the bridge. I would like you to do it again. And it's because it was the situation of this man called Jarvik. And what she explains in the interview, and Jacqueline Pearce is like an NFJ, right? She even went a little bit crazy, right? And became an artist model. I think an INFJ. So she talked about being against the feminists who at the time would say, oh, men and women are equal in terms of like physical power. She was saying, no, look at the bodies are completely different. And she talked about a situation where she is attracted to a man who she wants to have power over because she respects him. No, because he respects her. No, yes. Because, and I've talked to another INFJ about this, that it's not a case of them being a pushover. It's certain people that they see as strong and maybe they respect, and they want that person to be able to have power over them.
I could see that, but I'd also say there are subtle forms of power that non-NFJs maybe not realise.
Yeah. And also, on the other side of it, the NFJs can think that they can change their rough diamond. Because even NFJs are going to see ESTPs as rough diamonds, that they can improve them. And frequently you hear of film stars. In fact, what's her name? What's the black actress that won for Monsters? Monsters Ball. Halle Berry. She once did a Parkinson interview where she talked about being involved with bad men, and they agreed that it was because the thought that she could change them. And I think Diana Dawes was ENFJ, and she was involved with these like bad men, the bad boys. Interested in the bad boys, the exciting men, that type of thing. So I think the NFJs might think that they can manipulate and change and mold the STP. So again, it all depends on the power dynamics going on.
Have you ever That's probably no, but have you ever seen Daredevil on the Netflix series?
No.
No. Well, do you know the character Daredevil, the comics?
Was he blind?
Yes. Yeah, well, anyway, there's a fantastic brand new series. Came out last year, so the second series. In series 2, they bring in the character Electra, who's his ex-girlfriend from college, and the way they portrayed, I think he's an INFJ and she's an ESTP, and that sort of interesting relationship.
In the movie, I think Jennifer Garner played Electra.
Yes.
With Ben something.
Affleck.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know which of the title in the movie, but in the show, definitely they're definitely that good guy, bad girl thing going on.
Right. So I'm just going to quickly go.
I just want to plug Daredevil because it's a fantastic series.
Yeah, great. And you can talk about that. I'm going to go away for a minute or two for nature calls quite loudly sometimes, and I'm wondering, does this sexual for INFJ, can they have ESTP-ish qualities?
Of course.
And okay, well that was a short answer. I can't go to the toilet on that one, but maybe. So you talked about sexual for INFPs. Now, if you talk about them, please, with BPD.
Okay. BPD, like I said, how to put this? BPD just sounds to me very much like a strong and unhealthy FI problems, because it is about emotional intensity, and it does sound like SXFIs. It is about emotional intensity, it is about being emotionally unstable. They can have a severe lack of empathy because their emotions overwhelm them. Does it correlate to type 4? I don't think it correlates to type 4 specifically, because I think type 6s can be as well, and probably other types, but I would say FPs are more likely than FJs or any other type to have borderline personality disorder. Now, Riso and Hodgson, when they describe unhealthy type 4s, they don't mention this. They mention avoidant, depressive, and even narcissistic personality disorders. That's what they think unhealthy 4s are like. Now, the avoidant, like I said, is probably because they're INFs, and the INFs are likely to be avoidant regardless of their type, or be like avoidants. Depressive personality is more like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It's not the same as depression, because any type can have depression, anyone can have depression. It's not actually a recognised disorder anymore. Narcissistic personality disorder, that's interesting, because narcissists are usually associated with type 3 and maybe type 8, but several types can be narcissists. With them, it's very much, I suppose 4.3 in particular is more likely to be a narcissist than 4.5, but definitely the sexual type again, because all sexual types can have entitlement issues, feelings of entitlement when they're unhealthy. But it manifests for type 4. Narcissism is more about fantasy and the grandiose delusions and being self-centered. But it's kind of strange. I'm not really sure I agree with Reese and Hudson, their descriptions of unhealthy 4s as far as disorders go.
Right. My headphones ran out of juice, so there might be a little bit of echo. but I'm switching it around, folks. And then I'll plug my wireless headphones in. And then I'll plug Jonathan back in. Hear him? Put that back in there. There you go.
All right. Yeah, I was saying that I don't. Type 4 for the personality disorders is a bit weird because, like I said, avoidant can be any. I don't think avoidant necessarily correlates to unhealthy 4s. It can, obviously, but I don't think it's exclusive to 4s. Depressive isn't recognised anymore. Narcissism is more, as described, as usually more of a 3. The things I would associate unhealthy 4s with, I actually think schizotypo is quite. I don't know if we talked about that before, but schizotypo sounds like unhealthy 4 in some ways. I'll try and get that up.
Wait a minute. What does schizotypal mean?
Oh, I'm trying to get that up just a second. It's a mental disorder is characterised by severe social anxiety, paranoia, and often unconventional beliefs. People with this disorder feel extreme discomfort in maintaining close relationships with people, mainly for the fact they think their peers have or negative thoughts towards them, so they avoid forming them. Peculiar speech mannerisms, and odd modes of dress are also diagnostic signs of this disorder. In some cases, people with STPD may react oddly in conversations, not respond, or talk to themselves. They frequently misinterpret situations as being strange or having unusual meaning for them. Paranormal and superstitious beliefs are common. Such people frequently seek medical attention for anxiety or depression instead of their personality disorder. Slightly more common in males, but let's try to find
That
out.
might. Now, do you think that is more common in intuiting types?
Yes.
Sensing. Right. That right there might be Kretschmer's schizothymes.
All right. Okay. Here's the criteria according to the ICD. Inappropriate or constricted affect, which means the individual appears cold and aloof. Behaviour or appearance that is odd, eccentric, or peculiar. Poor rapport with others and a tendency to withdraw socially. Odd beliefs or magical thinking influencing behaviour inconsistent with subcultural norms. Suspicious or paranoid ideas. Obsessive ruminations without a resistance. Often with dysmorphophobic sexual or aggressive intents.
So some of these are sounding like.
They sound like the stereotypical. They sound like people's stereotypes of an NF.
Yeah, NF and some of them NT as well. Some of them INTJ.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now dysmorphophobic means the preoccupation that some aspect of one's own appearance is severely flawed and warrants exceptional measures to hide or fix it. Either it doesn't exist, either the flaw doesn't exist, or if it exists, it is exaggerated. Now that in particular sounds like an unhealthy 4, and that the feeling of the flaw and of being unloved because of your flaws being exaggerated. That's the other thing about 4's exaggeration, not to mention. Type 8 exaggerates their anger, type 6 exaggerates their anxiety and fear, type 4 exaggerates their sadness and their emotions and their flaws. But all those 3 exaggerate, so this in particular sounds like a type 4. Unusual perceptual experiences, including bodily or other illusions, depersonalization or derealization.
What's depersonalization?
Oh, I'll get it. I know what it means, but give me a second. Get the proper definition up. An anomaly of self-awareness. It can consist of a reality or detachment with the self, regarding one's mind or body, or being a detached observer of oneself. Subjects feel they have changed and the world has become vague, dreamlike, less real, or lacking in significance. It can be a disturbing experience. So it's either you or the world or less real somehow. Uh, vague, circumstantial, metaphorical, over-elaborate or stereotype thinking manifested by odd speech or in other ways without the gross incoherence. So you speak oddly and strange, but you can still be sort of understood. Occasional transient quasi-psychotic episodes with intense illusions, auditory or other hallucinations, and delusion-like ideas, usually occurring without external provocation. It can resemble basically can resemble schizophrenia, but it's not quite the same. It's more of a personality disorder than a mental disorder. And
Just posting the video for the watch page for this hangout. Right. What is going on if an INFP is a nihilist?
that could just be something as simple as having a 5 in the tri-type. That's 5 in particular is the one that's prone to nihilism. Maybe a wing issue, 4-wing 5 or 6-wing 5. But more, if it's not a wing issue, it probably just means they're 5 and they're a 5 fix. Or it depends on the type of nihilism you're talking about. If you really, I mean, 4s can seem nihilistic, but rather as caught in their despairs and all that. Like, woe is me, my life is in ruins, so the world is as good as ending, or if they're unhealthy.
See, I would like to know, because it's seemingly a contradiction between the FI Dom, which is a very moral person in terms of they have like principles, ethical principles, and yet nihilist.
Well, nihilist, you're talking about moral nihilism specifically.
Yeah.
Nihilism technically means different things. Well, I'm not sure if INFPs are necessarily. It's not necessarily that they're more moral than others. They have just a very strong emotions and emotional things. I don't really like the socionics way sociologists describes it as ethics, as if FI is ethical, because other A type can be ethical. Yeah.
Well, we don't really know what the word means in Russian that they've translated ethics from.
Could be, yeah, but see, I think some FI types, some INFPs would many different types that actually just would not like being called moral or ethical, because they would see that as sort of like external rules, or they're associated with ideology or religion or something, and it wouldn't be what they feel. It would also depend on what their specific ethics are.
Right. You know? What I can do is tell people what Dario's definition of FI is, and this is sort of one. So Dario Nardi's definition of FI in 8 Keys to Self-Leadership, which is the book that is promoted by the website Keys to Cognition. And so we'll see what it says about FI.
On the forums, this sort of thing is argued a lot on the forums, because you let FI types saying that FE types do not have morals or anything, because the descriptions are saying they're getting their ethics outside themselves, so they're not as real, they're just social norms. That's a stupid argument that comes from the forums a lot.
No. What FE is, it's ethics of emotions, and so it reacts to the emotions that they see. So there's a little bit of an overlap with Region T5 in SJs, where they see an emotion on someone's face, they feel that emotion in themselves, because it's like that part of the brain.
Is that all FE types, or is it just NFJs in particular?
It's all SJs have it. I know that ISTJs, I frequently compare ISTJ and INTJ because they're both FE polar in terms of lack of emotional expressiveness, but ISTJ cares a lot what people think of them.
Yeah, I mean more, do all FJs, do SFJs feel the emotions of other people as well as NFJs do? I know I did,
Well,
or it's not. It's obviously not. It's obviously not really feeling the emotions because it can do with fictional characters.
yeah. In fact, what it might be, so the difference might be is a sensing intuitive difference where the NFJ is able to make the connections. So they'll see the same thing, but the NFJ will be able to make the connections and abstract from that maybe a motive, something behind, like, oh, this fits in with that. Does this mean? And then using their imagination to connect up a hypothetical motive with those emotions that they see. Whereas the SFJs, maybe they are actually better at noticing the actual facial expressions and things because they're more sensing types, more in terms of seeing what is actually there rather than trying to hypothesize based off that. So they might see the little nuances and connect that up to experience.
I've heard that. I've actually heard that ENFJs are quite good at noticing facial expressions and mannerisms, better than INFJs.
It makes sense because they're in more social contact. And they're also probably more confident and more likely to maintain eye contact. And therefore, and the eyes being the windows to the soul, is they're looking at the eyes more than somebody else. That would be my opinion. Because if you're not really looking at someone in the eyes, you're losing a lot of cues.
Yeah.
And now, interestingly enough, INFP is the best at tone of voice. So it would be interesting to compare INFJs and INFPs in terms of their eyes, in terms of how much they look at the other person.
When they're lost, my mother complains that I'm never looking at her when she's talking. Like I'm always in the distance. Sometimes that means I'm listening. I'm just paying attention by that. Other days it means I'm drifting off.
Maybe it can be the other way around with the NFJs, where it's like, whoa, that's a lot of eye contact and a lot of FE coming at you. I don't know. So the way Dario defines FI is not so much as ethics. It depends on the FI. I mean, it depends what someone's. So, for instance, I take most of these, but for Enneagram 4 reasons, rather than an F reason. So, for instance, he's got 3 levels of FI. The lowest level of FI is. Let's see if you tick this box. Did you do the keys to cognition test with me? Yes, I think you did. You got INFJ and you went, yes.
Yeah. Yes, we did the video of it.
Yeah. Here we go. Feel strongly that something is good or bad. Right? Keep listening to your conscience when making daily choices. Remain true to what you want for yourself or others. That's the lowest level. Intermediate level is identify and defend what someone truly wants. I'll put question mark next to that. I just have defend what someone truly wants. I don't.
You don't understand, or?
Well, I don't. Identify and defend what someone truly wants. I mean, what do you mean by defend it?
Like you know stand up for them, or like if you feel like their wants are not being met and there's no good reason for it, you want to support them. They want something they deserve to have, but they're being denied it in some way.
Well, maybe they could change the word defend. And then we've got here, continually evaluate what is worth believing in and most important to you personally. And And then we got here, remain in touch with what you want and motivates you and what is good. And this is the higher level now. Create space within yourself for the truth of conflicting beliefs. Continue weigh whether choices harmonize with important beliefs.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Continue.
Continually weigh whether choices harmonize with important beliefs.
Yes.
And so what I put it here as notes, or some notes. My TI answers on page 104 match the way I think about 100%. In a conflict, my TI will win versus my FI. Most of the time, there is a synthesis or synergy, e.g. libertarianism. These FI answers are not as strong as my TI answers. I have a negative view of FI in others when it suppresses their logic or their ethics differ from mine. It depends on the, but not. And then I put here, I am not a great listener. And then, as well as matching me being Enneagram 4 Wings 5, this is in conflict with my TI sometimes. And then I put Enneagram 4 Wing 5, Enneagram being about motivation, not cognitive processes.
When you say you're not a good listener, is that your personal opinion, experience, or is it just you repeating what? Or do you
that's my personal opinion, because what will happen is I'll hear something, I'll think of something, and then if I don't write it down, then I'll be thinking about asking that thing. Because NPs can move on to different thoughts and forget about what the previous thought was.
Oh, I've noticed.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the problem with us. So,
well, when you say NPs, it's meant to be TI types of the watch list. There's not F.
Have you got Dario's book?
Yeah.
You've got that?
Yes, I do.
Very good. And I suggest this one to you. You're going to get that one as well?
I might.
Ooh, you might. Self-help book, how to improve each function, or rather, behaviours we associate with each function. So, I've asked about nihilist, and we've sort of gone over that, and it's tricky to say. It depends on the definition of nihilism. So, we can go over that. What types of nihilism do you think they are?
Well, you've got the way Nietzsche defined it, but Nietzsche was defining it as sort of like getting lost in meaninglessness, or that anything that's life destroying by his definition of life. So Nietzsche would characterize Christianity as nihilistic because he thinks the world is about. He thinks a worthwhile life is about being creative and being great and being constructively selfish. We'll say that. And all things that Christianity denies. Christianity is about, humility and modesty and putting others before yourself and so on. He would find that life destroying.
So, do you think Nietzsche was E4 or E5?
I'm not sure. He's been tagged as 5.4, which I could see. I'm not sure about him. I've actually thought about getting a biography just to investigate.
I'm sort of like coming to the opinion that Enneagram 4, INTJ. Although I have heard INFJ.
Yeah.
I've heard the majority of socionics people think IEI, and the second one is EIE. So, folks, that's roughly equivalent to MBTI, INFJ, and ENFJ.
Yeah, I'm not. I think I want to get biography. I'll look into getting a biography at some point before I
This
decide.
I've just started this. Thus spake Zarathustra.
Uh-huh.
And as far as I am concerned, there is some serious sophistry in here. Like, for instance, like you're trying to say that everything is in flux because the seasons change.
And that could be symbolism. They'll use a lot of symbolism.
Yeah, but the point is that when you're using the example that, like, the idea that you're saying, oh, because this changes, that means everything changes. And also, as a TI person, and then I also I mean, these are the kind of notes I make where I go, and it's talked about and so what I can see here, that this is NI, this is dynamic versus static, and INTPs. I think INTPs grow out of Nietzsche because they eventually realize that he is anti-TI. He is against their dominant function because we like the models and the theories and such. And
I can also see schemes very FE polar at times, like contemptuous of. He's very much about staying true to yourself and all that. That's why I usually take this IDG and contemptuous of the herd, as he calls them.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is a.
But
This when you have things like this. So you're talking about changing of the seasons. Go, who would still hold on to good and evil? What, because winter ends? So basically it goes from, because winter turns into spring, then how can good and evil be solid?
That's symbolism. That's him saying that yesterday's evil could be today's good.
No, it's not symbolism. It's sophistry.
Yeah,
but by saying, because, and also you have things like, I would come in and say, hang on a minute, changing of the seasons does not mean change, it's a cycle. And so, because INTPs are static types, and so they will look for cycles, they're always looking for things, like you're a dynamic type. INTPs, they look to generalize something, and it says, right, this is that, and they expect it to stay as that. That's the truth, that is that.
Well, the other type of nihilism that Nietzsche also deals with this. The more common type of nihilism is the idea that life is meaningless and there's no real purpose or all that. Nietzsche does deal with that, but he goes against it. He's considers himself an anti-nihilist because he's trying.
Did he understand it? Did he understand English, Nietzsche?
Don't know.
Well, I'd given the German translation of this and say, oi, there's 9 types of meaningfulness in this life.
Well, what he was talking about was, to really understand Nietzsche, you have to understand atheism is very central to Nietzsche's doctrine because he's talking about the death of God, and that humanity is used to find meaning in God and religion, and in the time he was writing, 18th century, science and enlightenment have started to cast doubt in that. So we have nothing to. And science is a cold substitute for God. It's not really giving you meaning. So he's saying that we need to find a new meaning.
But okay, but again, it's sophistry to say because these people find meaning in religion. If you take religion away, everybody can find everything's meaningless to everyone. That is sophistry. That is naughty. That is naughty. That is bad arguing.
Well, remember how dominant religion was. So that's what everyone was. Everyone was religious, and most of human history was about.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say he was biased because he was like, he had that tough, Lutheran upbringing. It's just that when I see this kind of thing, which is sophistry, where people are making these misleading arguments, where things like, when you say something like religion is, and this might be Davey, who is a little bit of a pretentious prat, he did this introduction. So Davey's like, oh dear. It's when you say things like, religion is a means of assuaging a terrifying sense of meaninglessness. Right? And then I'd say, okay, then that must mean, logically, that every atheist feels meaninglessness.
Well,
right? And so, right,
that's sort of what he's saying. But he's saying
that's what I mean.
He's saying
So,
that they can overcome it.
Yeah, but you see, but when you're exaggerating to make a point, yes, we know that a lot of religious people find strength in religion, and if you were to remove that, yes, that would be bad for them. And that if you are an atheist, so but that doesn't mean that other people don't have motivations and other things, like, as we know, Enneagram 2s.
Well, he's also talking about not necessarily just as individuals, but as humanity as a whole.
Yeah, I know, but it's when you're making rhetorical arguments.
And the other one last defense of him is that all the time, I think he's speaking from his heart. I think he's just writing whatever comes to mind, whatever his feelings are.
Yeah, and also he did write it as it is in a narrative form rather than his more. Yeah. And it does. I mean, for instance, what it is, it's not so much him; it's the bloody Davy. But he gives a much better quote. Here is a good quote. Now, this one's much more reasonable. As soon as a man finds out that the true world is fabricated solely from psychological needs, and how consequently he has no right to it, the last form of nihilism comes into being. It includes disbelief in any metaphysical world and forbids itself any belief in a true world. Okay, fair enough. But it's when people make these... You see, that one there, that's Davy, where it says, a means of assuaging a terrifying sense of meaninglessness. That's him, that's his problem. But again...
Well, that's on, I guess, that could be him being a 5-4, because unhealthy, average and unhealthy 5-5s do increasingly struggle with nihilism. And they also start to attack other people's beliefs and opinions to reassure themselves that at least they have knowledge, at least they're smart.
Yeah, but I don't like the example of where you have a story where someone comes up and what they say is a simple person. They say simpleton, and he says the simpleton comes up and says everything stays the same.
He's trying to be intentionally provocative as well.
Yeah, but then I know, but it's just like to then say, because the seasons change, everything changes. The logic does not follow.
Do you still want to do a chapter by chapter video series about this?
Oh yes, I can do it with you. Yeah. Would you like to do it?
I wouldn't mind. It's
excellent. Look, and not only that, is what I want to do is, as we go through each chapter, really, you want to do it?
Yeah, well, you can probably do more than one chapter per video because they're quite short chapters. But
okay, yeah, but for us, it would enable me to do shorter videos. But yeah, what I would like to do is forms of cognition, and that way, because INFJ, INTJ. Unfortunately, INTJ and ENFJ have the same form of cognition, dialectical algorithmic, but INFJ has that vortical synergetic form of cognition. And it's a very NI kind of, whereas INTJ is more, and what we could do is when we're going through each chapter, and what I'd do is, like in the early videos, I would explain what does dialectical algorithmic thinking look like.
I think you'll have to explain to me when
you videos. And then you can give me more Nietzsche knowledge because you know Nietzsche more closely.
I'm not an expert on Nietzsche. I know a decent general knowledge of passable knowledge.
Yeah. And that and you might be able to relate to vortex synergetic and say, yeah, I do think like that. I don't. The idea that I think it's the idea that INFJ maybe goes round and round and round in their thoughts, and so what Victor did is he went through all these philosophers and said this philosopher thinks like this philosopher thinks like that. So let's just say is well read. So we've done nihilist, Did we cover? Did you cover all the different kinds of nihilism? We did FI.
I think there's too many to cover, but well, the first one we talked about was Nietzsche's sense of nihilism, which is that, like I said, life destroying stuff is anti-Christian stuff. Then there's the other type he talked about, which is the normal version of nihilism, which is the idea that life is meaningless and there's no purpose. The third type would be moral nihilism, which is the idea that objective morality does not exist. There is no good and evil, which again is something he talks about. That could be quite circular actually, because even if you think that, I think a lot of the time when people decide there's no objective morality, they do still try and substitute it with something, even just based on practical stuff. Like they'll come up with, or they'll decide, it's not evil to not kill people, but there's practical reasons for not killing people.
Yeah.
And then it becomes almost the same thing.
Yeah, it's almost like you can say, you killed my friend, I like my friend. I don't feel very nice about that. So the actual fact that I don't like the fact that someone's been killed off, that bit's real.
Yeah. It's also even just things like if you go around killing people, there's a danger that you can. If it's okay for everyone to kill people, it's okay for someone to kill me. I don't on that. It's good if there's some kind of rule saying.
So I think it's deontology, or do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Unless you're an ESTP, because you don't mind if someone plays practical jokes on you. So, but yeah, my main thing was there is, to a certain extent, Donald Trump is a nihilist. Because I see a lot of ESTPs don't believe in a lot. They're very flexible on their principles. And
I'm not sure. What I'm saying, I'm not talking about moral nihilism, I'm talking about as a philosophical position.
Oh, okay.
And ESTPs usually don't go that deep.
No.
He's more of a relativist, I think, or he'll just see whatever. Because he probably does have some principles. I will say that he's under stress to go to 5, and they can become nihilistic, but that's again, I wouldn't really say he's nihilistic in the philosophical sense, in the sense of
he doesn't even think about it. He just does what is.
Nihilism is more of an active belief in nothing.
If people want to know what the word expedient means, he's like politically expedient is Donald Trump to a T. And the reason why I bring this up is that that's fundamentally different from INFP. And so I would think it would be a little bit of a... And of course, in Nietzsche's day, all of the ethics around him was coming from the Bible.
Well, that's what he was talking about, because it wasn't coming from the Bible. It was coming from other... There were new, more secular forms of it. He was saying, though, that even those secular forms, these post-Enlightenment forms that were trying to move away from the Bible, they were still drawing on it because they were still... You could still see the influence of Christianity, just because these philosophers had grew up in Christian environments.
Right.
And they were coming up with different reasons to follow biblical commandments.
Was it things like Christian socialism?
Or even just socialism. Even you would say that socialism rejects God and all that, but there's still a lot in common with Christian ethics.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think there was even a movement in the 19th century that would call themselves like Christian socialists.
Yes, it still is. That's not uncommon. But he's saying that all socialism derives from Christianity, which derives from Judaism and all that. Because in pre-Christian days, there's not this. You could have things like, killing babies was acceptable. If you have a girl and you thought, I don't want it, leave it to die. Or you could have things like, a rich Roman person would beat the crap out of someone, and if they paid the money, it's okay. It's like that's the fine.
Some of those things still happen in India.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing he's talking about. He's saying that all the time our ideas of universal ethics are really derived. They don't exist in pre-Christian societies.
Yeah, and I can understand that in something that's narrative, you're not as, but I think you need to be careful. You don't argue in a sloppy way. Argue in a watertight way, because then your critics don't have anything to.
Well, he's been very difficult for his critics, because it's very difficult to figure out exactly what he's saying at different times. It can be quite obtuse and contradictory. And intentionally so, because he thinks that only the world they will realise. Only people like me will realise what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
This is for you, my exclusive selective audience.
No, I would actually think it at one point. The problem is, once I get into the actual proper book, I'll be happy. It's just that I don't like Davey. He's a pretentious prat. It really. Oh. All right. Now what we can go on to? We've done the INFPs. So we've done the INFP, sexual Enneagram 4 INFP.
Uh-huh.
With and what they look like with BPD, and when they're nihilist. So now we can go on to your specialist subjects. Sexual Enneagram 4 INFJs.
My specialist subject. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't. I'm not sure I know any sexual force INFJs or in general. So I'm not. I'm not sure you'd work out the distinctions between the different MBTI types of the same Ennea type and the way you're wanting me to, because again, first I'm just not knowledgeable enough, and secondly, these are some of the rarest types out there, and there's a lot of mistypes.
Right. Okay. What I was thinking is how this interacts with the romance style. So, for instance, last time we went through the victim.
Yeah.
Romance style. So if you pull that up again, the wikisocion.org romance styles and then victim, and then you can compare that mentally with the E4 sexual.
Okay, let's see. Prone to initial doubts with intensity of own interest in another person. Not always confident about revealing the interest. Inclined to focus on whether or not the other person might reciprocate the interest. Inclined to question whether or not the other person's interest will remain constant with time. Preference for partners that provoke in the individual a sense of awe in terms of power, physical presence, and the like. Appreciation for the sense of power play present when interacting with such partners, with acceptance of a slight sense of superiority on the part of the partner, without ever actually submitting to them. This takes the form of the individual somewhat expecting the partner to be mean on occasion. In the case of the victim with males with female partners, the latter assumes the characteristic analogous to a knight devoted to his princess. Inclination to openly admit to a relationship having been ended by the partner rather than by the individual himself. Right. See, I'm not sure what you're asking me for, because these are supposed to be for all INFJs and all the NJs, isn't it? So
yeah.
I mean,
it's the relation. What I'm looking for is the relationship between the sexual instinct and the victim romance style, and how it might change it in your opinion.
I think it would be more just degrees of intensity. So for things like, it says prone to initial doubts about intensity of own interest in another person. I suppose in that case it would be that you do have an intense interest, but you're used to having intense interest in people. Your sexual instinct used to be intense, so you're not sure about whether this is real or not, whether this is the one, or whether just attracted to someone as you normally are. Whereas for me, I usually don't get that quite as much because I'm S6 last. Not always confident about revealing that interest. Well, I would say that SX types are usually more confident, or can seem more confident than most about pursuing relationships. They are more out there. They're more likely to pursue dating, pursue relationships. So I wouldn't say that's quite much of a problem, not revealing the interest. Unless it's meant to be serious interest. Inclined to focus on whether or not the other person might reciprocate the interest. I suppose if you're a sexual type, that would be more kind of maybe they won't ask them. Maybe they'll carry on with the relationship without really seeing how serious it is, or I would just imagine that it would be a victim still on steroids. That's my overall impression of it, of this. But I suppose SX would make all the types their romance still on steroids. Like an NP would be the infantile on steroids, and SP with the aggressor on steroids, and so on. So it's an exaggerated sense of it.
Right.
I mean, I'm clutching at straws here because, like I said, this isn't my speciality.
The reason I bring up nihilist with this is that in the Kersey INFJ profile and the INFP profile, there's a big difference in that he writes that the INFP, his INFP profile is the INFP is a very ethical person, whereas the INFJ is somebody who sees the moral complexities. And the INFJ is complicated themselves. They see all the moral shades of grey. And that, I believe, is what is more compatible with ESTP. Because, because ESTPs are expedient. And so I would say that using a loose definition of nihilism, that the INFJ is more nihilistic than the INFP, because the INFJ sees all the shades of grey and the moral ambiguities.
I don't quite agree with that. Firstly, I would say that if to the extent that we're maybe nihilistic, that would be more of the NITI loop. I would say that would be what makes most likely to make someone nihilistic. Secondly, I would not say that INFPs cannot see moral shades of grey, because, I mean, again, we said that George R. R. Martin was an INFP, and if you read Game of Thrones and all that, you know that he can deal with moral complexities. He can see shades of grey in all of his characters. It's more.
No, I mean, they're still got their own firm beliefs. Yes, they might be able to see it moral shades of grey in others, but
I think it's more a case of tolerance. It's more like we're both quite true to ourselves and our values and all that. It would actually relate to the INFJ door slam, I would say, because
what is that?
Now, come on, Crystal talked to you about it. You asked her that.
Is it someone who they get annoyed and
It's more like a door slam. Any typical door slam. It's the idea that you know someone or in a relationship with someone, a friend, and you've had enough. They've crossed too many lines and all that, and you shut them out of your life. Like if they were toxic or whatever, or if they're just too annoying or whatever. INFJ door slam is because INFJs are the last type to door slam. They give people too many second chances.
Right, but when they do slam the door. It's bolted shut.
Yeah. Whereas INFPs, I think they're going to slam the door probably in the third or fourth try. That if you're lucky, you're lucky if you get a second chance with INFPs if they really feel that you're offended them.
Oh yeah, like Dario showed that. Like they're the best at listening until they made a judgment. And he told the story of he had two together, he had a man and a woman, and like he really found her attractive until she said that her and her family had converted to evangelical Christianity, and it was like all activity shut down.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. It seems like intolerance to me, to be honest. But they would probably say is they don't have to. Why should they tolerate it?
Now, if I heard that, it would just raise a smile on my face. I thought, oh, interesting.
I find it quite bothersome because interesting thing is though I'm a type 1, so ethics, morality is quite.
You see, that might just be the sexual instinct. We go, oh, interesting. That's by the by.
Well, there's things. As I was saying, I'm a type 1, so
yeah.
The social one, ethics and morality, really mean a lot to me, and I know they mean more to me than some other INFJs I've talked to. But I do still, I think dealing with moral complexity is a way of perfecting my morality or improving it, because recognizing it.
I think I might be 451
or
415.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I used to think I was that. That's the first tri-type I thought I was, but then I say I was a 152.
But you see, mine one has come together where the TI and FI has come together with this, with Austro-libertarianism. And that's, it's come together. It's hard to explain. Anyway, we won't talk about that now. If we do that in future, I'd need graphics too. In fact, I will be rubbing it in and doing so many videos on it. Once the US dollar collapses, I will be saying, right, folks, now you want to understand. And I won't, right, and then we won't just sound like crazy Ron Paulites, who's been saying this for decades. Right.
I think we should do a video on your Enneatype or your Enneagram tri-type at least.
Yes, it'd be great to do it with.
Yeah, you, me, and Crystal. You, me, and Crystal. We can sit down and discuss. Well, you're with a star for once.
Yeah, and I will. Oh, thank you for once.
Well, I'm here, so you're on there. But.
I like doing videos with the fact that the other person is the star, because it says something about the quality of my guests, that they are the stars.
Yes, well, we'll be the stars, but we'll be talking about you this time, because that will be an interesting video.
Yeah, I showed Crystal some of my school reports when I was like 13, 14, 15, 16. So Enneagram 4. Oh dear. And of course, refreshingly original, terrible punctuation. It's like, forget the punctuation. Underlining refreshingly original. Yeah, but it's like the teachers writing problems with punctuation. And how about helping me with that? They write these things, and I go, well, you could have told, because then when I was at school, they never taught those things. Why criticise it then? I had to learn grammar from this book, correct English, and I learned all the rules, like verb to be. I mean, technically, people should say, I am he, and it was I, and things like that. This is the verb to be. So now we can talk about, so we talked about the E4SX INFJ. So what does INFJ look like when they have BPD?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, my first instinct, if I met someone with BPD, would be that they're an FI type. An FP. That is really from the description. That's the impression I'm getting. I would also say that they're a sexual type. I would say It's really more of a
So now we're getting into a little difference here between INFJ and INFP. I think there's something interesting that we can use to distinguish between the two types, where you say BPD is for FI types.
no
Okay.
BP. Again, from the description, it sounds. I mean, INFJ is kind of strong FI, so that's possible. But, overall, just the impression I get from BPD is there's a lack of foresight. There's a lack of emotional control. You're overwhelmed with your emotions. I mean, the symptoms should be the same regardless of your MBTI type. I would say that I was going to say that INFJs who BBT might be more manipulative, but that may not be true because FPs may just be manipulative in different ways, or subtle differences, or even in the same ways but from a different point of view. That makes sense. Yeah, it's quite tricky to nail down the specific difference, the nuance. You're asking for a certain level of nuance. I would.
So if I, maybe I could put it a different way. Like, why do you think that it would be tricky for INFJs to have BPD?
Because I don't know. Because they value FE more than FI, so they'll have a greater level of emotional control. Whereas I could see that FI types being more easily overwhelmed by their emotions, which is what this is about.
What about if they were like an Enneagram 2?
Possibly. I think I was saying, I think it is. Let me check up Enneagram 2. Give me a second. Let's see what the order one had to say.
Yeah, because the unhealthy Enneagram 2.
Yeah, the historic and facetious personality disorders. What the heck is facetious? I don't even know. Facetious personality disorder.
Yeah, I've got. Let's see what they got at the back of the book, because they did. I think it was DSM-4 when they did it. They had.
Yeah, this doesn't. I know it's. Oh, Munchausen syndrome. All right. Yeah, pretending you're ill. Okay. This isn't. There needs to be an ICD thing, actually. Let me see it. Yeah, this is.
What it's got here. This is for DSM-4. Corresponds to aspects of the avoidant, depressive, and narcissistic personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got here, type 5 corresponds with aspects of the schizoid, avoidant, and schizotypal personality disorders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see. Oh, it's this. Oh, see, I was thinking it's a personality disorder, but it's a regular disorder. It's more of a symptom of other things. Yeah, it's funny because they don't mention dependent personality disorder, and I would think a self-preservation too, an unhealthy self-preservation too, would correspond perfectly with a dependent disorder, because that's more like needing someone to look after you. That's more or less what self-preservation 2 is. When self-preservation 2s or unhealthy self-pres 2s are meant to be childlike in a way, in that they want someone to.
So not. I thought they would be codependent. or is it just does the self-pres override that?
No, I remember Chestnut. I think it was Chestnut. She called them childlike, and it was like they would have the mentality where they want someone to. It's almost like someone marrying a guy who's the spitting edge of their family or their father or something, or someone who can bring home the bread and would deal with the homemaker.
Yeah, I can see that with the INFJ, where again, if they're in a state where they're submissive and they want the ESTP,
Yeah, but it's more
take care of them.
It could all be any type too. But more of an. It could be an SG as well, or
yeah.
or an ENFP. ENFP is often type too sometimes. But
yeah, I can see that with ISFJ.
Yeah, it's funny because actually the passion of the vice of a type 2 is meant to be pride, but they don't mention the narcissism. But they just Gul Dukat from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think he's a type 2 wing 3.
Right. Already, I'm going to put the tags in Batman and Darth Vader.
What do you mean?
You know, in the description, I'll put the tag in Batman because you did talk about them.
Did I mention Batman? What does it say about Batman?
Wait, I can't remember. I think did you say type 6 for Batman?
No. I might imagine.
I think you might have done an instinct with Batman. Did you say?
Okay. I said it was SOSP type 8. In my opinion, strong sides. SOSP strong sides 8.9 in my opinion.
Did you say strong side?
Strong side, yes, as in he's social first, but he's a strong self-preservation instinct. Second. That was my viewpoint.
Right, so we've done. So far, we've done. Because all of these are like sexual Enneagram 4s. We've done INFP. INFP with BPD. Nihilist version. We've done E4SX. INFJ. INFJ with BPD, which might be a bit of a. Now we can get an interesting one. Sexual 4 INTJ.
No idea. So
right.
It's such a rare, but pure theory, and I don't think it'll be much different from the others.
Okay.
Except for the more FE pores.
Okay, if we talk about INTJ with BPD.
If you've got a list of types with BPD, I don't think it's going to. I can't have much to say because again, my working theory is that FP types are the most likely to be that, and if you're an INTJ, you're more likely to have other personality disorders than than this.
Because they could have that NIFI loop.
Yeah, they could I can say they could show signs of it certainly, but it's not.
I mean, like the Enneagram 4 INTJ, maybe they have some INFP elements.
They might, but again, I'm not correlating borderline personality disorder with unhealthy 4s. I'm correlating it with unhealthy SX, and it could be unhealthy 6s, and it could be unhealthy 4s, it could be unhealthy 6s, maybe even unhealthy 3s and 2s.
Okay.
It could be that 6 and 1 might show signs of BPD when they disintegrate, but 6 is more likely because of the doubts and the abandonment and the sense of identity.
Right. So, I think you said you've not got much to say about Enneagram 4 INTJ. Okay. What about sexual INTJ?
Obviously, as they probably go after someone, obviously either an ESFP or someone who's intelligent. Or I'm trying to think if I know any essay. See, I think I know some.
Are they more likely to get obsessive? The sexual INTJ.
Oh, Oh, there is one real life example. I won't say because it's quite disturbing. It's criminal actually. But, it was a big internet scandal. Someone I think is an INTJ who broke up with their girlfriend, accused her of cheating on them, and then doxed them, and was part of a campaign of abuse. Doxing is when you post private details about someone on the internet.
So, what's that slang term you just used?
Doxing.
Doxing.
Yeah, that's when you post. That's when you take someone's private details and post them on the internet. And if anything happens, like if they get sent hate mail or threats or anything like that, if they get shamed or whatever, so on. So that I am thinking of a specific instance here. I won't get into details. It was quite publicised.
Pictures of my ex.
Not just pictures, could be their address, their phone number.
Wow.
Their Facebook, the social media accounts, their Facebook page, their places of work. Some people can get sent really horrible messages. Some people can get sent rape threats and death threats, and not sometimes in envelopes to their house, like just to show that they know where you live and all that. The police can get involved, lawsuits and all that. So
and the woman could get together with a man who can handle himself and then go round and batter the ex.
That will make a dip. Well, yeah, you don't always know it, but also the specific instance I'm thinking of is a minor, is a not necessarily a celebrity, but someone who's relatively well known in certain internet circles, and the way they were framed, they were blamed for other stuff. So it wouldn't matter what happened to the ex, because a whole bunch of people really hate this woman, some other woman, and a lot of misogyny was involved. Like a lot of people just hate women. So yeah, I think I can see INTJs being quite stalkery if they're sex dominant and unhealthy.
Yeah, but, well, I wasn't going to say, but now you've said it. So yeah, basically, INTJs can go.
They can hold a grudge.
There's a number of ways they can go off the psychiatric rails.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's interesting because that's also a sign of how they're the mastermind. It's not a real mastermind, but it's like in their minds they're the mastermind because they've set loose this campaign against someone.
I was trying early on today. I was thinking, do I actually know an arrogant INTP? And I was thinking, I know quite a few arrogant INTJs, but INTPs they're just interested in lots of different subjects. They've not got this vision that they attach. Do you know any arrogant INTPs?
In real life, no. But I can see how INTPs can come off as arrogant, whether they mean to or not, or especially if they get really heated about something, about certain opinions.
Like if that happened on Facebook,
I also
in the INTP group, I think mistype ENTP.
No, I'm thinking. I can think of INTPs like that. I also think I've also heard that INTPs and ENTPs are the most likely to be internet trolls.
Oh, ENTPs, yes.
Yeah. Also, INTPs. I mean, you were saying earlier that INTPs, when they're younger, they're likely to point out people's mistakes.
Yeah.
So I could see INTPs as trolls doing that. Like they're just saying, "No, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong."
Yeah. That's,
or making people to be stupid. Again, this is more. I would relate this kind of thing to unhealthy Enneagram behaviour.
Yeah, yeah.
Unhealthy fives, and obviously most ITPs are fives.
I can
fives get quite know-it-all.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
But generally, I would say that INTJ is.
And more obviously arrogant, I would say. Not
Yeah.
as, I just want.
That's an FE thing. INTPs try and hide it when they're older.
INTJs probably come off as more. INTJs maybe just come off as more arrogant than they mean to, but it's also the case of this being their FE pole where they don't.
Mm.
They're not trying to offend you, but yeah, it happened. Not their problem, man.
Sorry, what you're saying? You sound quite a little bit.
Yeah, I offended you, not my problem. It's your problem.
What, me?
I'm speaking as an INTJ to whoever.
Oh, right, I see. Right, so sexual INTJs are stalkers or OCD or
If they're unhealthy.
yeah, if they're unhealthy. That's the little caveat.
They could be wildly successful as well. Experience.
There are probably some INTJ lawyers out there.
Well, they like me. I'm an INFJ. You're the one who has to worry.
Right. Okay. I think that the healthy INTJ is a very good thing. They can do a lot.
Yeah.
Very, very. They can accomplish, and probably will accomplish far more than INTPs. Because INTPs are not that and David Kersey Jr. has talked about the difference between INTJs and INTPs, and the INTJs are just more focused and get those things achieved that they focus on. INTP is not focused enough. Not one of the. I go straight to the quote in Kersey's INTJ profile, or rather, Mastermind Rational. INTJs submit every idea to the test of usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas INTPs will probably submit every idea to the test of, oh, how interesting is it?
Yeah.
So now we have, in your opinion, what about, oh no, sexual Enneagram 4 INTPs?
Well, what do you think of yourself? How do you think? You would. I've got one right here. What's his opinion? I mean, how do you feel you differ from others?
I feel I differ a lot from the Enneagram 5 INTPs. I've not got the energy to do the research. It's, or if I start to do the research, I'll then connect it to something else. And I want to do something more creative. Now, if the research is for a hangout, and it's to make a hangout better, and then might do the research for it, but I'm still bad at doing the research. But on the other hand, I read things so closely and think about it a lot and connect it to that I actually memorize it. And so I think I do quite a lot with a little bit of knowledge. And that because so I'm somebody who needs to do more homework, but I also see like the cost benefit, and I say, well, if I do that, I can't do this other thing and these other subjects that I'm interested in. But yeah, I mean, when you see that the Enneagram 5 description, that is very INTP-ish. And then they like research for research's sake. I don't. I like it like I'm interested in typology because it can relate to characterization. So, and I'll always try and get into. Now, the only theory I'm interested in that isn't related to creativity really is I did this sheet of things that I'm interested in and how they overlap and my motivations for doing certain things. So there's the subjects that I'm interested in. Mainly writing, and then typology, and then the overlap between writing, typology, and people skills. So these things have a use, and you could say that the people skills and the typology has to do with the sexual instinct, and then the writing obviously with the Enneagram 4, and I put here in blue xenoscience, like what does a Martian look like, because that could be like to help with creating it's a good book. It's written by a mathematician and a biologist. And then look, there's a little bit here on philosophy as a bridge between Austro-libertarianism and the writing. But that is so all the subjects I'm interested in either to do with people skills, typology, writing, and then Austro-libertarianism. So there would be like this book, like I said, I've shown this before, Human Action. But then with Human Action, you can see the connections with typology and with praxeology and with McKee. You know when I talked about McKee and the gap and character being revealed through action, and I can give an example of, and again, this is an example of making connections where I have it somewhere. There it is. Oh no, I hope I've not squashed the rings on it. What they did is they released it spiral bound like this, so that when you open it, it stays open. And you can have that, and then you can look at Human Action on the side. So here is a little bit from the first chapter. So because it has study questions. So for instance, things like purposeful action and animal reaction. What distinguishes praxeology from psychology? Why doesn't action consist merely in giving preference to something? What does Mises mean by action is a real thing? And then you've got prerequisites of human action. What's always the incentive for a man to act? And the incentive is, well, to make his conditions better, right? To alleviate, but it depends on the individual, but they're always acting to improve themselves. Now they might have a self-destructive need, but they still see that as better. Like, oh, I might, even if it's like, self-destructive or something. That's still something that they want. And then, so here we go. Why is it a tautology to declare that a man's unique aim is to attain happiness? What distinguishes man's behavior from animal behavior? Then human action is an ultimate given. Comment. As human action cannot be choices, it must be considered as an ultimate given and must be studied as such. So, for instance, he would say, as we know from Enneagram, we go further. We don't just say that human beings are motivated. We try to then split that up into 9 motivations. Anyone who believes in Enneagram takes it as a given that people are motivated. And Mises' view is that you don't know what the actual motivations are. You just know that everyone is motivated. And we assume that. When we talk about someone, but we go much further, and we really go. So we've got, and then you've got rationality and irrationality. Why must the term rational action be rejected as pleonastic, i.e., redundant? And basically saying here is everyone's action is rational, or rather motivated. And even if someone does something on impulse, we can say, well, that's still a motivation. That's the SP temperament. And this is why action is rational because 99.9% of the time we understand other people and why they do things. Even without them saying anything, we go, oh, we understand, because we are human beings, we can understand why they do what they do. We don't see it as, very rarely do we go, oh, that's random behaviour, that's out of character. And if we do see that, you think, oh, there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's wrong with you? Are you on drugs? Why can't an action that is unsuitable for attaining a certain end qualify as irrational? Because the person who takes that action thought that it would attain that end. It doesn't matter whether they're doing something stupid or not, or something that was ill-advised, is they thought that that would work in the moment. So, and then it's talking about causality. And it's like there's two things, like you've got causality and then causality and teleology. So it's like, so someone will take an action thinking that it will cause such and such and such and such. Now you can see how this relates to Robert McKee. People take an action thinking that a certain result will occur. And then you've got, so people interpret the world through two main things. They look at cause and effect, this caused that, and also they look at teleology, they look at purposes for things. And it's like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's this, it does this job. And so, do you think that's fair enough to say that things are understood basically with those two categories? Purpose and causality.
Mm.
So, but here we got here. How does praxeology deal with the problem of analysis of other people's actions? Why are behaviorism and positivism unsuitable for the explanation of the reality of human action? Yes. Because, as we know, you can have two people do the same thing.
Mm.
For completely different reasons. Yeah. And here we go here. Why are causality and teleology the only appropriate approaches in the field of human research? So, for instance, we use the teleological method of Enneagram. He did this because of this. That Enneagram. Like, we do that. You probably do that every time you read fiction. You think, oh, it's consistent with this.
It's become a bad habit thing.
Yeah. And even people who don't know about typology, they know when someone does something out of character.
Yeah.
Right. So instinctively, humans are hardwired to see these patterns in order to understand other people, and so it's a given that that's the ultimate given that people do things that to them make sense, and we cannot judge what they value. Right, that is where praxeology says, okay, we're not going to judge what they want. We're just going to say, and everyone's action is motivated in the moment. So somebody could have a weight problem, and but they act in the moment to say, oh, I'll have that cake.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and somebody sending out, but it's like that was the decision. That was how that individual weighed things up at that moment. And other people make different choices, and they talk about how in economics, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And again, someone can make the choice, oh, I will buy that handbag that costs $2,000. And another woman might think, are you crazy? But no, it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
It's purely subjective. And so that the subjective theory of value. And so again, these are like study questions to think about it. But these things connect up. And so this would be an example of how I look at things where I'll go, well, actually this fits with Enneagram, and this fits with Robert McKee, where with Robert McKee, every action, where what happens in a story is people take these actions and then something goes wrong in terms of someone surprises the protagonist. They take an action, and it's like, oh, what did I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's how they react to that new set of circumstances. I may have slightly dodged the question. Right, I'll go back to... so yeah, the things I'm interested in go back to human nature.
Okay.
And even with the Austro-libertarianism, again, there's ethical aspects of that. Like, for instance, with the fair tax. What happens with the fair tax is they just have a sales tax on everything. So everyone pays the same amount per purchase. Now, on the other side of that, it's also the best economics. Because what it means is that you can export something with no embedded taxes. Mm-hmm. And everything that's imported is subject to like the 23% fair tax. And it also means that consumption is taxed, but savings isn't. And the more people save, the more money goes into business, and you get a net shift of resources into production. And then because there's more production, that lowers the prices of the things produced to then such a point where there's an equilibrium where I'm buying this because it's really good and really cheap. So you get a natural equilibrium. So that's how the things come together.
That's how your brain works.
In the subjects, I mean, it's not like, yes, you have a slight interest in Linux, but I'm not. I don't watch the Linux Action Show anymore. So these are the things I'm interested in, and why. And a lot of them relate to human nature. I'm not like reading science books or things like that.
Okay. How do you relate to borderline personality disorder when you described it? If at all.
Really? I don't think so.
No, right.
If you go through each bullet point again,
okay,
then I can.
That's just me, validating my theory that there's FI types. But,
yeah, okay. If you go through every bullet point, this can be like the climax.
Splitting, thinking extremes.
Sometimes, but
then most people do sometimes, but
then realizing, it's just cranky or I'm tired.
Yeah.
And then I wake up.
Yeah. So probably not really. Well, how about this? In the psychopathy checklist, they would score you from 0, 1, or 2, with 2 being really applies, 1 meaning somewhat applies, and 0 meaning doesn't apply at all, or hardly really applies, except in the
I'll just write that. I'll write that down. So 2 is really applies.
Yes.
And then 1 is
somewhat applies.
Somewhat.
And 0 doesn't really apply. 0 means it applies like on a bad day or whatever, but usually not.
I'll put that on a bad day.
But a really bad day, but
yeah. Usually not. Usually not. Right. Okay, I've written that down.
Okay, so thinking in extremes.
Thinking in extremes. Yeah. Somewhat.
So 1. Yeah.
1, yeah.
Yeah. Chaos in relationships.
0.
Okay. Markedly disturbed sense of identity.
Disturbed sense of identity. What does that mean, disturbed?
A change in self-image or sense of self appears to be linked to emotional dysregulation, because disturbed identity creates a negative effect that's hard to regulate because of inhibit emotions, numbness, emptiness, leaping from one mood to the next without a sense of narrative identity. It's things like you don't have your sense of self is disturbed because your mood keeps changing, because your relationships seem to be all over the place, at least from your perspective.
It's usually external things that change my mood.
Uh,
I mean, I can
oh, external
wake,
things, obviously.
I can wake up in a bad mood,
Uh,
but it doesn't.
so it's more like do you have a strong sense of self? Do you have or do you have a stable sense of self in general? Like, do you feel comfortable as a member of your family? Do you feel comfortable identifying as your nationality or religion, whatever? Do you have any? Do you worry that this isn't real in any way or whatever?
No,
Or
I worry a
unreliable?
lot, and I am,
Unreliable.
and I would say I'm fearful avoidance.
Hmm.
But I don't feel like I'm going mental.
No, probably
I
say
just feel
zero.
like feel like someone who has a lot of anxiety
You could be a
at
six.
times.
You could be a six. Interesting. But well, that's for the next time. That's for your
Or SE polar,
or as you.
or just very SE polar. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, you don't seem to have a disturbed sense of identity. Yeah, that's
Thumbs up.
yeah. Okay. So that's a zero. Intense or uncontrollable emotional outbursts. This is FE inferior or something.
Right. This is it goes up to that, but I don't actually do the outburst. I feel like it, but I don't actually do the outburst.
How often?
Again, it's situational. It depends, but what
often?
it is.
How often do you find yourself in those situations?
Yeah, but usually it's anxiety that caused that, and then I think I might say something, but then I use logic to say no, don't do that. That will be counterproductive.
Okay, probably a zero then, because this would be. It doesn't matter. Either.
I don't actually do the outburst.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like. Yeah, this is be like you do the outbursts. Yeah,
The
they don't.
inside is different. The inside is different from the
Well,
outburst.
if you don't do the outbursts, it's probably a zero. So.
Yeah.
Unstable interpersonal relationships and self-esteem.
Yeah, the self-esteem.
Say a 1 or 2.
Yeah, 2 for that.
No, no. It's probably on 4, I think. Yeah, okay. Concerns about abandonment.
So, what did you say about 4?
Oh, I was tallying up your score. I think you've got 4
All right.
out of whatever.
All right.
What would this be? I'll just make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 4 out of 20 so far. You're probably not have PPD, but concerns about abandonment.
What does that mean?
You're worried that your loved ones will leave, like your spouse will leave you, your parents will leave you, that one day they just go up and leave and quit. And you're dependent on your relationship, so this is terrifying.
No. 0.
All right. Self-damaging behaviour. Like I said, that can be actual physical self-harm, but it can also be self-sabotaging your lifestyle, whatever.
Ooh. Behaviour. Yeah, but usually be thoughts like, yeah, don't do that. That would be stupid. But I can urge to do something like that, but I don't actually do it.
It could just be things like making poor decisions or you're not necessarily conscious of it, but it's a question of it's almost like you be passive aggressive with yourself.
The thing I really get down on myself for is not being implemented enough or being disciplined enough. That is what I really get down on myself about, is not being disciplined enough.
Yeah, I think this is more serious. Probably 0 again. I think. Distorted self-image.
Hopefully not.
Okay. 0. Impulsivity.
Well, you said the only way to judge distorted self-image is for other people to comment on that.
Well, what is your self-image?
I suppose it's pretty much how I come across in Hangouts, I suppose.
Okay, then it's probably 0. Unless you're secretly grandiose or something. Which I'm totally not. Impulsivity.
No, but I have the thoughts, but it's the fear. I have the impulse. Now, sometimes it can be impulsive in any way, where it's like you spot the opportunity. But if it's anything that involves like fear or danger, then no. So so the fear will hold me back. So not, because again, fearful avoidance, the impulsivity. The impulse is there, but I don't act on it.
All right. Frequently accompanied by depression, anxiety, anger, substance abuse, or rage.
Yeah. It's very short-lived.
What about?
It's not even like a whole day.
Yeah. Because you also, what's that about? 4 out of 20. You're fine. You're not borderline personality disorder.
Oh, thank you.
In my completely unprofessional opinion.
Okay, that's good. Right then, so
it's 20 past 11, so I think.
Right. Okay. Yes. So we might as well. Because I've got to do. I've got to go, and I'll be back, folks, in about less than 2 hours, doing a hangout with Jeff, the SP Spaz. So it's bye from me,
and it's goodbye from me.
right? And I'll actually stop it now. Here we go.